Hi, and welcome to a Spider Strategies QuickScore training video. In this video, we'll be covering creating scorecards in QuickScore. Scorecards in QuickScore are vitally important because they define the structural foundation for what data and information is gathered, related, stored, and scored in the underlying QuickScore repository. Scorecards are also important because their structures and properties define what will eventually be available for reporting, visualization, presentation, and delivery to help you monitor, manage, and provide actionable insight on your organization's performance. And lastly, scorecards are important because they are very flexible in design and give you the freedom and opportunity to define your unique performance management plans and structures so that you meet the needs of all the QuickScore contributors and consumers throughout your organization. With that said, let's jump into QuickScore and work with scorecards. I've logged into QuickScore and have landed at my home page where I can see a welcome message, alerts that I've subscribed to, and responsibilities that pertain to me. Our goal today is to work with scorecards, so in the primary navigation pane on the left, I'll click the Scorecards link. That brings me into the Scorecards section of QuickScore, where presently I am viewing the Mobile World Inc. organization. If I wanted to change and view a different organization, I can certainly select a different organization from the listing of existing organizations, each of which has their own unique scorecard. I'm choosing today to work with the Mobile World Inc. and its Mobile World Balanced Scorecard because the Mobile World environment is provided to all prospective customers in their trial environment and to all customers in their new hosted live production environments of QuickScore. We at Spider Strategies provide you with the Mobile World environment with the intent of giving you an opportunity to view, navigate, and play with an existing balanced scorecard solution in QuickScore. The Mobile World organization is also great in terms of its balanced scorecard because it is a wonderful representation of a classic balanced scorecard set up with the perspectives of financial and customer, internal processes, and organizational capacity. Each of those perspectives are, of course, fed scores from underlying objectives such as increased revenue, improved profitability, etc. And each of those objectives are in turn, of course, provided score information from underlying unique individual metrics such as book revenue, training revenue, and product revenue. So for training purposes today, I'm showing you the Mobile World Inc. organization and its scorecard because it's a wonderful representation of a classic balanced scorecard. And in fact, when we get into the actual tutorial of creating a balanced scorecard, we will be replicating the scorecard, the financial perspective, one of the objectives, and some of the underlying metrics or measures that you see presented to you right here. With that said, let's forge ahead and create a scorecard. In QuickScore, scorecards reside or live within organizations. In this case, we've been viewing the Mobile World Inc. organization and its one unique scorecard called Mobile World Balanced Scorecard. To create a new scorecard, we first have to have a new organization to house the new scorecard. So I'll click on the organization dropdown to view the menu of all existing organizations. Towards the lower right of that menu, I'll click Edit to get into edit mode, which gives me the opportunity to create a new organization. So we'll just call this Training Organization and add that organization. It now exists at the bottom of the listing of organizations. Note that it is visibly different than the other organizations with a hollow or empty circle as compared to a filled-in circle. That is because there is not yet a scorecard residing in the training organization. I'll click Done to remove myself from edit mode and then click the Select button to the right of Training Organization to open that organization. And you see the first thing is presented to me is the opportunity to create a scorecard. I'll of course click on the Create Scorecard button and provide this with the name of Training Scorecard. If you desire, you can provide a description of the scorecard and associate tags to find the scorecard later. We'll just leave those blank and click Create. Now that the scorecard called Training Scorecard exists, it assumes that we're going to forge ahead to build up the scorecard in the classic balanced scorecard paradigm of defining perspectives. And that is what we'll do here. We'll create a perspective called the financial perspective. Note that out to the right there is the type drop-down where during the construction of a scorecard, you have the opportunity at any point to define different items or elements of the scorecard. The software presumed again that we want to define a perspective because that's the first logical next step after creating a scorecard. So I've given this perspective a name and I click Create in the lower right hand corner to create the financial perspective. We can also create another one called Customer Perspective. And I can just hit enter to define that customer perspective. Next, we'll create an internal processes perspective and a learning and growth perspective. Having created the 4 perspectives that we desire in our training scorecard, it's now time to move on to the next level or layer of scorecard element definition, which are objectives. I will click on the financial perspective and up at the top, click New Scorecard Item. I'll provide the name of an objective called Increase Revenue. And confirm out to the right that the type of object that I'm creating is an objective. And I'll click Create in the lower right hand corner. Immediately, it assumes I would like to create another objective, which I do, which will be improve profitability. And after defining the name and confirming that it's an objective, I'll just hit the Enter key to move more quickly along to the definition of yet another objective, which is reduce overhead. And again, click Create in the lower right corner to define that third and last objective under the financial perspective. At this point, our scorecard structure is coming together nicely, with the scorecard, our perspectives, and our objectives defined. But what we're lacking right now is really the engine of our scorecard, which is comprised of metrics or measures that we're going to track and score and use to define our performance across all the objectives and perspectives already in place. So the next step here is to create metrics or measures within the objectives that we've defined to this point. So I'll select Increase Revenue and click the New Scorecard item at the top to present myself with the Create Measure screen on the right. The first measure that we'll create is Product Revenue. I'll give it the name Product Revenue. To the right, I'll double check that I am setting this object up as the type of a measure. If you want, you can define descriptions for each measure, which can very often be helpful so that people can understand the source, if you will, of the data for this measure or metric. Moving down the screen in the Measure Details area, we have the selector for scoring type. QuickScore provides you with 11 different scoring types, from unscored to simple yes, no, goal only, 2 colors, and so on. The most commonly employed and default setting for scoring type is goal and red flag, which provides you with a 3-color 0 to 10 scoring range. Moving to the right, we've got the calendar dropdown, where you can define the frequency with which any given metric or measure should be updated in the system. To the right of that is the data type dropdown. The data types available are either number, percentage, or currency. In that this is a revenue metric, I will select currency. The aggregation type, down to a little bit to the left, provides you with some different choices on how the values for this metric should be aggregated when you look at them at higher calendar periodicity. In this case, we're talking about a monthly measure, and the question is, what should the measure do when I look at it at a quarterly level or a yearly level? Because again, these are revenue numbers, I just want them to be summed up at those other calendar levels. To the right of that is the decimal precision dropdown, obviously empowering you to define what level of decimal precision you'd like to see presented for your metric or measure within the software. And then the currency dropdown having set this up as a currency metric, I would like to define that I'd like to see it presented in the United States dollar currency. Moving further down the screen, we get into the very important series area. The series area is going to reflect the scoring type that you selected up above. Again, in this case, I left it at the goal and red flag scoring type, but just a quick demonstration that if I had selected, for instance, 4-color scored middle, you'll note that what is presented in the series area changes to accommodate the appropriate scoring type selected up above. Again, I'll just set it back to goal and red flag because that is the scoring type I want to use for product revenue. And we will set values, or threshold values, I should say, for our red flag and goal. These numbers are very important because they very much define how obviously the measures or the metrics are scored and where a color will change from yellow to red or from yellow to green. So the red flag value in this case for our product revenue is going to be 440,000. And that means that if I dip below 440,000 for any particular month, this will become scored as red and will receive a score somewhere under 3.33. Similarly, moving over to goal, this is where you define the numeric threshold where the color will change from yellow to green, and a score will be provided that is going to be higher, somewhere higher than 6.67. So in defining the red flag and goal values here, you're defining the thresholds primarily that determine the colors for your metrics as presented in the scorecard. Moving further down the screen, we have the opportunity to assign owners and updaters. In this case, I will assign myself as the user presently logged in. I'm logged in as a user named user, and I'm going to go ahead and take ownership responsibilities and updater responsibilities. Notice that if someone has been set up as an updater, they can either be provided with the opportunity to update or change thresholds or not, depending on the setup that you define here for this metric. After setting all the properties for product revenue in the lower right-hand corner, I'll click Create. Product revenue has now been created, and the software moves ahead and presumes that I want to define yet another revenue here in this same objective under increased revenue. In fact, I do, and I want to create training revenue. The setup for training revenue is going to be pretty simple for me this time around because the create measure interface has effectively copied or adopted all of the settings, the property settings from the previously created product revenue metric. So it's set up as a measure. It's already set up to use the goal and red flag. The calendar is monthly. Currency has already been set as the data type. It's again copied over the aggregation type of sum. Decimal precision I didn't address anyway, and the currency is set to US dollars. So really what I need to do here for training revenue is just set the appropriate, again, red flag threshold and the goal threshold for training revenue, which in this case will be 200,000 for the red flag, and the goal will be 220,000. The owner, again, I'll set myself up as user of the owner of this measure and as the updater of this measure. And again, click Create. A third measure that we want here in the increased revenue objective is book revenue. Again, it's adopted or copied over all of the property settings as the other two product and training revenue measures. And again, what I need to provide here is quite simply the red flag value of 50,000 and the goal value of 70,000. And again, I'll set myself up as the owner and the updater of this new measure or metric for book revenue. Okay, so at this point we have defined the three measures that we want under the increase revenue objective. We have product revenue, training revenue, and book revenue. One minor thing I want to point out to you here in this training video is that after a measure has been defined, if you click on it, you'll see that in its definition screen on the right, which is very similar to what we worked with when we set this up, there is an additional field here called weight. What the software will do is evenly divide 100% into however many feeder measures there are for a given objective. So the increased revenue objective is being fed by product, training, and book revenue. Each of them have an equal weight of 33.3%. If by any chance you want to adjust the weighting for the measures that feed up to an objective, you can click on the weight field and be presented with an interface where you can manually adjust the weighting. So let's say I want product revenue to actually comprise or have weighting of 50%. So it's twice as impactful in terms of scoring as compared to training revenue or book revenue. So you do retroactively have control over weighting after measures have been defined. You can't control it while you're defining a measure as a new measure, but once it lives, you can adjust its weighting. Another thing I like to touch on here with you is the idea of calculated measures. So within the increase revenue objective, I want to add another measure in here, which isn't going to actually feed the increased revenue performance score, but I want it in here for tracking purposes. So I'm going to create something called total revenue. And again, it will be a measure. In this case, I'm not even going to score this measure. I just want this measure in the software so that I can report on it and have visibility to it. So I will set it up as an unscored measure, which calendar monthly, data type is still currency, aggregation type is the sum, everything is the same as the other measures I've created. But having set it up as unscored, the only thing I get to do or have the opportunity to do in series is to define an actual value. Well, in this case, the actual value is going to be provided as a calculation. I'm going to add together product revenue, training revenue, and book revenue to define the actual value for total revenue. If I select calculated as the type of measure or under series, I can then click on set equation and proceed to define an equation for this measure. In this case, I'll be using existing measures. I'll navigate out under the measure dropdown into the financial perspective and open the increase revenue objective where we just recently created our new measures. I'll select product revenue as one element of the calculation. Under series, I'll verify that I do want to grab or use its actual value for any given month, and I'll click add. So up in the actual value field, I have M1569, which is the unique identifier of product revenue behind the scenes, and then I'll type a plus sign and add to it another measure, which is training revenue. Again, I'll be leveraging or pulling its actual value. Again, click add. And one more time, I'll type in a plus sign and navigate out to select the book revenue. Click done, verify I'm getting actual value, and click add. So there is a pretty simple actual value formula now defined where product revenue, training revenue, and book revenue are all added together to provide me with a value for total revenue. And I'll click create. And now that total revenue exists, I just want to verify its weighting. If I highlight total revenue over on the left, you'll see in the weight field over on the right that it is set to 0%. It carries no weight in terms of scoring the increase revenue objective or rolling anywhere further up the tree structure to financial perspective or the training scorecard. Now at this point, of course, to finish the construction or creation of your scorecard, you would follow all of the same steps in terms of creating additional objectives and measures for all of the other perspectives, customer, internal processes, and learning and growth throughout the scorecard. But for now in this training video, we are done creating the scorecard. So I'll click done towards the lower right corner of the black navigation pane. And we'll move ahead here to putting some values in for those measures that we just created so that we can see the result in a scorecard. To provide actual values for measures in a scorecard, there are two fundamental avenues you can take. The first is to work in the scorecards area of QuickScore and work directly with measures where they live. So for instance, product revenue, if I click on product revenue measure, no data has yet been provided for the month of February 2018. If I want to provide actual values for this product revenue measure, I can click on the edit button down below and provide the value of, let's say, 480,000 and click save. So for the month of February, and only for the month of February, I have provided actual values. If I navigate back to January, there's nothing. February there is, and you see that it's colored and scored. It's colored green and scored 7.8 because I exceeded the defined goal of 740,000. If I navigate to March, again, we don't have any data for the month of March. So you certainly can work within the scorecard itself to provide actual values for any measure anywhere within the scorecard. Perhaps an easier avenue in terms of providing multiple values for multiple measures across multiple time periods is to navigate out to your home page and go to the Your Responsibilities area and click Measures I Update. This will give me a more condensed listing of all measures that I have been assigned to as an updater. Along the top, there's a Measure Updates drop-down list. Presently, it's set to all organizations. I just want to focus my attention on the training organization that we created earlier and the measures within that single organization. Again, you see that for the month of February 2018, I do have values for product revenue, but nothing for training revenue or book revenue. If I want to provide multiple values across multiple time periods, I can change this, let's say, to quarterly for quarter 1 of 2018 and say show results. So now you see the same 3 measures, but I now have 3 months worth of opportunity to provide measures. I'm going to pause the training video, feed in some data, and be right back. Okay, I'm back after providing actual values for 3 months for our 3 different revenue measures. You see that in the lower right-hand corner, the Update Measures button is now active, and I'll click it. There'll be a pause, and it will go and save any that had not been previously saved. And all of those actual values are now logged for all 3 measures within our scorecard. If I want to view that at the scorecard level, I can return to the Scorecards section of QuickScore, navigate into my training organization, open the financial perspective, open the increase revenue objective, and I'll see that from book revenue to training revenue to product revenue, I do have scores at the quarter 1 2018 level. I can also adjust that to say, actually, I'd like to see the monthly values starting in January of 2018 and show results. So for product revenue in January, we are below the red flag threshold. For February, we jumped into the green area. We exceeded our goal. And for March, we're back into kind of middle performance area. And the same thing applies to training revenue and book revenue. You'll note that total revenue, which you will recall was an aggregation or a sum of the 3 other measures that was set up to be not scored. I am tracking the values, but because they're not scored, there are no colors assigned to the performance for any given month. Furthermore, you'll see that increased revenue as the objective that rolls up. Product, training, and book revenue has received a score of 3.4, and the financial perspective has a score of 3.4 because increased revenue is the only objective in that perspective that has any values to share or roll up to the financial perspective. Similarly, the training scorecard, again, is going to have a score of 3.4 because the financial perspective is the only perspective that is presently scored. So as a review of what we did here in this training video, we created a scorecard. We started by creating a training organization within which we housed a scorecard. We built the scorecard up into perspectives with underlying objectives and feeder measures. We hope this video on creating scorecards in QuickScore has been helpful to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us anytime at learn@spiderstrategies.com. Thank you.